She grinned into cameras that reached billions of households for 30 years. She lectured about family, truth, and protecting the defenseless. She established one of the strongest Christian media empires in the genre's history, and she did it with what seemed to the outside world to be a really warm heart, unshakable faith, and unshakable conviction. However, there was a life that those cameras were never able to capture behind every broadcast, flawlessly illuminated studio, and thoughtfully crafted on-air moment. A life full of choices that went against everything seen on video. Now that Joni Lamb is no longer with us, she passed away on May 7, 2026. At the age of 65, we will give you the whole narrative, not the version Daystar manufactured for broadcast, but the version that the record truly depicts. A quick but crucial note before we start. NPR, NBC, The Christian Post, The Dallas Observer, court documents, ABC News, The Roy's Report, the Trinity Foundation, and Wikipedia are just a few of the verified, publicly available sources from which you are going to hear. We shall identify claims as such whenever we describe them. We shall state that the facts we discuss are documented. This is neither a flattering nor a deceptive obituary. It is the whole picture because the whole picture is important, particularly when the organization under discussion continues to ask millions of people for financial assistance in the name of God and reaches over 2 billion homes worldwide. On July 19, 1960, Joni Lamb was born in Colleyville, Texas, as Joni Traylor. She was raised in a strongly religious family in Greenville, South Carolina, at Tremont Avenue Church of God, a church where faith was not something that was practiced on Sunday mornings and neglected during the rest of the week. It served as the prism through which each day was viewed, and the entire course of her life was initially determined inside those church walls. A young Georgian evangelist arrived to spearhead a revival. Marcus Lamb was his name. He exuded the kind of presence that fills a room before a word is spoken, and he was self-assured at the pulpit. Joni saw. Marcus saw. Following the service, they started chatting and continued to do so for the next few weeks and months. On August 6, 1982, they tied the knot. They were merely itinerant evangelists in the early years of their marriage. No network, no empire, no platform. There were just two young individuals traveling across the nation, preaching anywhere a church would allow them, and often having trouble paying for the roads they were traveling on. Then, less than a year after their marriage, Marcus detailed an incident in Israel that he would talk about for the rest of his life. He claimed to have received a direct message from God telling him to start a television channel. They took it at face value. They committed to it. And by other accounts, the launch costs were so low that Marcus grabbed a broadcast transmitter out of an actual dumpster just to get the signal on the air. That restored transmitter was renamed 45 Alive and became WMC-FTV 45 in 1985. The station was based in Montgomery, Alabama. Marcus was 27. Joni was 24. It was Alabama's first Christian television station. Their son Jonathan was born around that time. In 1990, Rachel, the daughter, followed. The Lambs relocated to Dallas, Texas, the same year after selling WMC-FTV to the Trinity Broadcasting Network. There, they bought a local channel that had gone out of business and made a fresh start. TD was featured on their first live broadcast, Jake's 1992 New Year's service at the Potter's house. Rebecca, their youngest and third child, was born in the same year. Then, on New Year's Day, 1998, they made things official. A Daystar rising in believers' hearts is described in 2 Peter 1:19, which inspired the official name of the Daystar television network. It wasn't branding, it was a scripture-based mission statement, and it's clear that they meant it in those early years. By all accounts, what came next was amazing. Daystar relocated to a 90,000 square foot complex with 17 state-of-the-art broadcast studios by 2003. Some of the most well-known figures in American Christianity, such as Joel Osteen, Joyce Meyer, Jesse Duplantis, and Hillsong Church were added to the roster. In 2006, Daystar became the first Christian network of its sort to broadcast in Israel, thanks to Marcus's strong ties to the country. The network eventually reached over 200 countries and claimed an audience of over 2 billion homes as it expanded across major cable and satellite providers worldwide. From an external perspective, it was the realization of all the promises made by the salvaged transmitter. However, even during that remarkable ascension, the foundation was beginning to show signs of weakness, some of which were pecuniary in nature. Using 6 years' worth of audited financial statements from court documents submitted as part of a 2011 employee lawsuit, NPR released a historic examination of Daystar's finances in April 2014. According to the investigation, Marcus Lamb informed his congregation during a 2009 sermon in Australia that Daystar had written checks totaling $30 million for charity contributions during the preceding 5 years. After reviewing the financial records, NPR discovered that actual philanthropic gifts to outside beneficiaries were $9.7 million, or about 5% of total donor earnings rather than $30 million. According to the same study, Daystar sponsored Blake Koch, a Christian NASCAR racer, with $572,000 in ministry monies. Daystar itself would stress that this came from non-donation ministry revenue rather than direct viewer contributions, as NPR accurately reported. Marcus Lamb's former special assistant and self-described golf buddy, Reverend Frank Harbour, received a $2.3 million loan from it to help him launch a church. Later on, that debt went into default. Additionally, it had paid close to $100,000 for bulk copies of Joni's autobiography, Surrender All, from retail bookstores, a strategy that can increase its position on the bestseller list. According to Daystar, donors received the books as presents. These expenses were all lawful. In response to NPR, Daystar said that all of its charity contributions went to organizations that shared its Christian objective and that all of its operations met with IRS regulations. Additionally, the network correctly noted that an outside accounting firm audited it every year. Law-breaking was not the larger systemic issue. Opacity was the cause. Daystar was completely excluded from reporting the public financial disclosures that the majority of NGOs are required to make, since the IRS had categorized the network as a church rather than a typical benevolent organization. Daystar was exempt from the 990 form, which permits the public to review a charity's revenue, expenses, CEO compensation, and governance. There was no legally required way for viewers who contributed an average of $35 million a year to the network to find out how their money was spent. All they had was what Daystar decided to share with them. Lisa Anderson, a former executive assistant who worked for Joni from 2007 to 2011, subsequently told NPR that there was a big difference between Daystar's on-air persona and the actual working environment. It felt like a ministry, she claimed, while the cameras were on. She claimed that it seemed like a profitable business when the cameras were off. She was available 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, including holidays. One Thanksgiving, she recounted, Joni called and asked her to drive to a bakery, pick up a cake, and present it to the Lamb residents. Without a word being said to her, she drove to the house, passed the family at their own Thanksgiving table, placed the cake on the counter, and then drove back to her interrupted dinner. Then came 2010, and the tale that, at least in the eyes of the public, altered everything. Marcus Lamb admitted to having an affair while sitting in front of his own cameras. He and Joni presented it as an act of bravery and openness, claiming that they were going public because they had been the targets of a blackmail attempt. They said that Marcus and Joni refused to use God's funds to pay 3 people who were seeking $7.5 million to keep quiet. Joni talked about forgiveness and betrayal while crying. After that, the couple made an appearance on the Dr. Phil show to support the story of their faith overcoming temptation. It was among Christian television's best examples of crisis communication. However, the documented reality underlying that public admission was far more nuanced. The alleged blackmailers weren't criminals in a back alley demanding cash. Three former Daystar workers had brought legal actions. NBCDFW, the Dallas Observer, and the lawsuit records filed in Dallas County District Court in December 2010 all reported that the affair itself was not a transient moral failure. The connection lasted 7 years with Janice Smith, a senior Daystar executive. According to CBS News, an email Marcus wrote to Smith expressing his eagerness to make her the next Mrs. Lamb was included in the lawsuit. The lawsuit also claimed that donor funds had been used in connection with the affair and that Smith received large sums of money after leaving Daystar. Daystar disputed those claims. In front of their audience, Marcus and Joni openly referred to the ladies bringing those claims as extortionists. According to the Christian Post and the Texarkana Gazette, the Bedford Police Department looked into the extortion claim but decided there was not enough proof to move forward. Eventually, the lawsuits were dropped and resolved. They were pardoned by their audience. The network continued. A second complaint was filed just a few months later. Jennifer Falcon filed a lawsuit in federal court in Dallas, claiming that Daystar's administrative manager of special projects, Bill Traylor, the father of Joni Lamb, had repeatedly harassed her sexually, creating a hostile work environment. According to the Christian Post and NBCDFW, the lawsuit claimed that Traylor had repeatedly told Falcon to sit on his lap, made her give him long, tight hugs during what he called quiet time, and placed his hands improperly during those encounters. He had been seen by Falcon as a father figure. Marcus and Joni refuted the accusations. In the end, that lawsuit was dropped. The network continued. Lawsuits that are dismissed do not necessarily indicate that the accusations were untrue. They indicate that no verdict was reached in the cases. Regardless of the judicial outcome, the women's accounts are included in the documented record. Additionally, they fit into this narrative because they are a part of a pattern that would recur at Daystar over the next 15 years. Accusations met with institutional denial, legal wrangling, and public reframing. Jonathan Lamb advanced to the position of vice president at Daystar by 2017. The Green Room was a show he co-hosted with his wife, Susie. Although Marcus and Joni appeared to be proud, something was already shattering behind that image. Susie visited Daystar's on-site clinic in 2017 for a chiropractic treatment. Marcus and Joni personally welcomed the chiropractor doing the treatment into the premises because they thought he had turned his life around after allegedly assaulting a youngster and losing his chiropractic license. The chiropractor was never charged with a crime and passed away in 2021. Thus, the Roy's report, which looked into this in great detail, is not disclosing his name. Joni knew enough about his past to know that any adjustment involving a woman had to be accompanied by a second person. However, Susie's colleague took a quick break on this specific occasion. Susie claims the chiropractor severely sexually attacked her during their time together. According to Susie's account to the Roy's report, the attack caused her severe physical agony but was not rape. She gave Jonathan a call right away. Jonathan gave his parents a call. The Roy's report's detailed account of Jonathan and Susie claims that Marcus told Jonathan over the phone to keep quiet and that he would take care of it. "We need to protect Daystar, and I want to protect you, so don't say a word about this to anyone." Daystar denied in a formal statement to the Roy's report that Marcus had paid off the chiropractor and that Joni had ever told Susie not to speak. A few days later, Joni told Susie that Marcus had paid the chiropractor off and that he would never hurt her again. Without ever being charged, the chiropractor died in 2021. Susie Lamb carried that assault in quiet inside the building that had silenced her for years before she spoke about it in public, and no police report was filed in 2017. We are now in 2020. Daystar uses its unique platform to advocate for alternative cures and oppose immunizations as COVID-19 transforms the planet. Daystar was granted a $3.9 million federal Paycheck Protection Program loan in July 2020, Investigative investigation by Ministry Watch claims that the network bought a 1997 Gulfstream GV private jet a few weeks later. Marcus Lamb stated that the jet was bought with money from an investment and the sale of the network's old aircraft, rather than PPP monies, when Inside Edition questioned him about the timing. After Inside Edition's report, Daystar later repaid the full $3.9 million debt plus interest. The optics of a Christian television network collecting over $4 million in pandemic relief funds and buying a luxury plane in the same window were not overlooked, regardless of the veracity of the explanation. The scariest aspect of this whole tale emerged during the same summer of 2020. Later, Joni Lamb told the Roy's report that at a family get-together, a male family member, referred to as Pete in all subsequent coverage, told her that their 4-year-old daughter had unintentionally entered the restroom while he was undressed. Susie thought it was odd, but at first she thought it was just a coincidence. The youngster was able to tell her mother that a guy had sexually abused her by November 2020. According to the Roy's report, the youngster described the nature of the assault in ways that a young child might understand. She gave bodily details of the offender but was unable to identify them by name. Susie got in touch with the child's school and verified that no male staff member had access to her. Colleyville police were notified of the discovery by Jonathan and Susie, but the investigation was closed when the youngster refused to talk to officers. Susie gave Joni a call as well. Joni didn't call the police in response. Rather, she allegedly asked Susie to bring the girl to her and brought the child into a secluded room by herself. In light of what had happened to her in the Daystar green room in 2017, Susie was very worried by the child's complete silence about the occurrence after that meeting. Joni Lamb denied to the Roy's report that she had ever had a one-on-one conversation with her granddaughter about the abuse. The Lamb family took a group vacation at a leased beach house in Miramar Beach, Florida, 8 months later, in August 2021. The 5-year-old daughter of Jonathan and Susie requested to go swimming. She was instructed by Susie to go upstairs and put on her bathing suit. Pete, who was there, got up right away and trailed the child to the stairs. Susie talked of observing a shift in his attitude. She was alarmed by the way his expression changed. She knew that a mother's alert would be more easily disregarded than a father's account, so she sent her husband instead of herself to fetch Jonathan right away. When Jonathan walked upstairs, he saw Pete and their naked daughter in the bedroom. Pete started apologizing right away and again and over. Later, Jonathan told the Roy's report that it was like walking in on someone who had been caught red-handed and had apologized around 50 times. The two couples were reunited. In response, Marcus and Joni defended Pete, arguing that he was only upstairs because he loved the child and wanted to spend time with her. According to Susie's recorded statement, Joni responded by implying the youngster had just undressed herself when Susie pointed out that none of it explained why a grown guy was in a bedroom with a naked 5-year-old. Marcus apparently admitted to the group that he knew what it was like to be wrongfully accused. After that, the two couples were told to pray together and confess their sins to one another. Pete requested Jonathan and Susie to apologize. A week later, Marcus called Jonathan into his office to inform him that Debbie Leonhardt, the counselor who had been brought in to evaluate the case, had forensically cleared Pete. That was untrue. Later, Leonhardt informed the Roy's report that she had never finished evaluating Pete since his wife had attended the scheduled interview and responded to every question on his behalf, making an objective assessment impossible. She claimed to have informed the family that Pete would have to come back for a formal interview. He didn't. It wasn't until November 2023 that Jonathan and Susie discovered that the clearance Marcus had mentioned had never been granted, thanks to a recorded chat with Denise Boggs, the reliable family advisor who had set up the Leonhardt sessions. Marcus Lamb passed away on November 30th, 2021, at the age of 64 from COVID-19 problems, 3 months after the conversation in which he mentioned that clearance. Throughout the year before his passing, he had openly discouraged his audience from getting COVID vaccinations. Marcus never had the chance to confront Jonathan and Susie about what he had told them. Now, that discussion will never take place. Doug Weiss, a Christian counselor and frequent Daystar guest who had appeared on the network with his wife Lisa in 2019 and publicly described her as the person with the purest heart he had ever known, and Joni started seeing him after Marcus passed away. Just 58 days after Marcus's death, Doug filed for divorce from Lisa. The growing relationship was opposed by all three of Joni's children. Joni received a written warning about Weiss from a reliable advisor. According to reports, Doug's own wife tried to keep the marriage intact. Nothing changed Joni's path. On June 10, 2023, she wed Doug Weiss. Several stories claim that none of her children were present during the wedding. There is a lot of documentation about what happened after the marriage. Pastor Jimmy Evans informed Jonathan Lamb in a 90-minute recorded meeting that his mother was God's voice to him at Daystar and that it was his duty to heed her. Susie was dismissed for not reading an on-air comment from a viewer supporting the marriage. According to expense documents that the Roy's report was able to get, Jonathan was stripped of his vice presidency, put on a formal performance improvement plan, and had a GPS tracking device installed in his workplace car by the network's own head of security. On tape, Daystar's own lawyer informed Jonathan that he had no right to question the organization's authority. The same security officer who showed up at the Lamb residence with a gun and a bulletproof vest handed Jonathan's dismissal letter on November 16, 2024. In 2024 and 2025, the network lost over 30 significant programming partners, including Jack Hibbs, Greg Laurie, and Joyce Meyer, due to the mounting controversy. Once portrayed on Christian television as the living example of Christian family values, the family was publicly and totally shattered. Through the first several months of 2026, Joni Lamb's health had been deteriorating. Throughout her life, she had been fighting metastatic bone cancer, a disease that had never been made public. She made one recorded private attempt at restoration in the weeks leading up to her passing. About 3 weeks before her passing, Joni had a private meeting with board member Tom Callander, according to a close family friend whose story was confirmed by Jonathan and Susie Lamb in an interview with the Roy's report. She was wearing makeup. Despite the pain, she remained upright in her makeup chair for 30 minutes of conversation. After years of disagreement, she warned Callander during that discussion, if Jonathan tries to reach out, give him back Daystar. They followed the GPS tracker, the NDA demand, the surveillance, and the firings. They originated from a woman who, according to those who knew her well, was aware that her home was disorganized and that she was dying. When she passed away, Jonathan was not by her side. No hospital call was made for him. The fact that her situation was critical was not disclosed to him. About 10 minutes before Daystar posted the news on social media, he found out that his mother had died. It was not his family that informed him, but a company lawyer. At the age of 65, she passed away on May 7, 2026. This is the aspect of Joni Lamb that makes the story more nuanced than a straightforward morality tale, and it should be stated clearly. She had nothing at first. She and Marcus created a network that actually reached billions of people in more than 200 nations by taking a transmitter out of a dumpster. Through that forum, the gospel reached millions of people who might not have otherwise heard it. Support was given to missionaries. Communities received services. Lives were altered in ways that are impossible to quantify or ignore. That is true. It has real weight. Furthermore, it shouldn't be ignored, not even in the midst of everything else we just discussed.